everyone, welcome to Tech Talks. Today we have the NF temperament, known by Keirsey as the Idealists, and known by Berens as the Catalysts. So Catalyst stands for something that transforms, but is not transformed itself. It's a transforming agent that's able to instigate a process of change in other things, but is itself stays in integrity. A few of the traits that NFs share is wanting to help individuals realize their potential. NF types are known for their empathy. And so what this temperament shares is actually a deep empathy for the world, for the people, and for deeper issues of society. People of this temperament tend to want to help, as I said, foster potential and growth through the forms of counseling, communicating, coaching, and teaching. They generally look to the future and are very visionary and idealistic. They kind of see a utopia for society, and they kind of want to help make the world more of its potential. So it's all about seeing what could be and trying to realize that potential, especially when it comes to people, though, or like humans or souls, working with some sort of personal element and transforming it. Whether it's through creative means or getting people to search further into themselves, into their souls, is really fostering change. Oftentimes, NFs feel like they're meant to change the world, but they don't really feel like they're meant to be a part of the world. So they can feel kind of disconnected from the world, but also here to kind of change it. NFs tend to be diplomats. They tend to excel with the skill of diplomacy. And what this means is that they tend to figure out through mutual cooperation or some sort of non-violent mean on how to make the world a better place through love. There's a deep empathy for others' suffering that this temperament shares and wants to kind of rectify that suffering in the world. And so NFs is very relevant to the book that I'm writing, which will include a section on the NF temperament. And I'm writing this book with Brady, the ESFP, for my panels. And so this is still rough work. We wrote this really quickly, but here's the rough section we have on NFs, just a small little teaser of it. We named the NFs the Idealistic Utopians. And so they're focused on what is valued in the realm of concepts and ideas, trying to create an idealistic utopia. The NFs are constantly coming up with ideas on how to make humanity better. An NF is never satisfied with the status quo. They are always seeking for improvement. When empathizing, they want to listen and absorb the essence of a problem. They're less interested in solving a person's problem and more interested in understanding the cause of the problem.
Yes.
Why do you feel X? And why do you want to feel Y? And so the NF's statement is, how can the optimal value be obtained and reached? And so that's a bite-sized chunk of a small section of the book that we're writing. It's still in progress, so we're still refining it. That's a little teaser there.
Gonna be the best book of all time.
Thanks, Paul. And so to get this party rolling, Carol, could you tell us a bit about you?
Sure. I am a classic poster child for ENFP preferences. I'm not saying that it's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. I was in a bookstore and somehow Keirsey's, please understand me too, somehow ended up in my hands and a light bulb turned on and my life has never been the same since. I read about, what he calls Idealists, Berens calls Catalysts. And it's like, oh my God, here's someone who finally understands me. It's like I was like 34 when I discovered this book. I imagine none of y'all are even 34 yet, but I was 34 when I found this book. And I've had a profound sense of feeling seen for who I am and understood for the first time in my entire life. And I've been, my second career, for the past 20 years, I've been teaching and speaking and writing about psychological type and temperament and interaction styles. And it's my dream career. And thanks to Keirsey, I survived corporate America because he taught me enough to help me flex to survive corporate freaking America. And then I ended up creating my dream career, which I've done for 20 years now. So that's probably enough of me talking, but I'm glad to be here. And I eat this stuff with a spoon, and I get up out of bed hoping to teach somebody about this every day. So I'm glad to be here.
It's really nice to hear your story with type and how it was a game changer for you. It helped you make sense of all your eccentricness and your idiosyncrasies that are different than other people. And it gave it a label of feeling seen and heard instead of shamed, as NFness is often shamed or ignored or disregarded in culture, because it sounds a little woo-woo. Sometimes, like when NFs are full-blown,
A little woo-woo.
All the NFs get told to go and NF themselves.
We are the definition of woo-woo, Joyce. We are the embodiment of woo-woo.
We are. The more ourselves we are, the more other people are like, wow, are you for real?
Yeah, or why do you exist? Yeah. Until they need us. And then thank God that we exist.
Darn straight, Paul. Darn straight.
Yeah. Oftentimes, it can be seen kind of as a little threatening to be an NF too, because sometimes NF ideals are not always the most realistic ideals. They are the most optimal ideal, so this is like the best state of humanity. But sometimes people find it really hard to sometimes believe in what NFs preach because they see so far into what people could be that people are afraid that that's not something realistic that can be met. But NFs are like, you can make it realistic. Like, I just genuinely believe that this can be a better reality for everyone. And so oftentimes NFs are met with the ST and they're like, oh no. And there's this like fight over that. When we learn about NFs, we learn that everyone has something to contribute to the ecosystem of the world and that we don't have to stuff down the most essential parts of ourselves to be alive. That oftentimes what we contribute the most to the world are the things that aren't immediately accepted because it takes time for people to accept something that is change, even if it's good change. And so, Denzel, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Denzel. I'm an ENFJ. I'm also a life coach, life/personal development / relationship coach. And I learned about Myers-Briggs and type back in 2014, I believe. To make a long story short, my INFJ friend David and my now wife, Jamila, who's ISFP, they were both talking about it. And then they were trying to figure out what type that I would be. So they already knew what types they were. And then when they got me to take the test, then I took it the first time and I got ESTJ. And we all three were like, nah. And then the second time I took it and I got ESFJ and I was like, okay, like, yeah, that was fun. And I just kind of like left it alone. Right. It was 16 personalities. So you know how they are.
It's a gold standard.
Exactly. But then I as I kept on I literally just threw it aside because I saw it as like which Disney princess are you kind of like test BuzzFeed kind of thing.
Which are you, by the way? Which one?
I'd probably say Esmeralda.
There you go. Good answer. Good answer.
But so it was actually Jamila's older brother. He's an ISTP. He was studying Myers-Briggs in depth because he was a screenwriter. And so he like asked Jamila like a few questions about me. He's the one who actually told Jamila what type she was too. And he was like, Denzel's not an ESFJ, he's an ENFJ. And so Jamila goes to read about all of it. And then she's like, oh my gosh. And then she's like, Denzel, you have to check this stuff out. Like, it's so you and this is that. And I was a little bit annoyed because, again, like, I'm like, I don't really care which Potter's house I'm in and all that. Like, this stuff is not really real, or like it's real enough to like where it's just like general, whatever. But then, like, when I read the ENFJ one, it was like so scary accurate about so many things, and it brought a lot of like security into a lot of the NF things that we might be going into that made me be like, okay, wow. And then I got really surprised. I'm like, Andy, her older brother, I'm like, how the heck did you know what type I was, but the test didn't? And like, I want to learn how to do what you do. And then I found like Dave's superpowers and personality hacker, and started like learning about the functions. And then I started talking about it on my YouTube channel. And then people like, oh my gosh, I like pay you to like talk about this? And then it's like, yeah, sure. So here we are.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah. And Paul?
I'm still trying to process a couple things, because if, Carol said she found MBTI in her 30s and she's only 29, that must mean that she found it in the future. So I'm just getting a little, I am an INFP, which essentially means I'm a doormat that talks. I'm a crybaby, but you'll never see it. I write poems, you'll like them, but I'll never admit it to your face. And gosh, and I try to be original with intros that kind of fall flat. I think that's a decent summary, perhaps. I'm a Gemini, which means I was born in June and nothing else. Let's just get that out of the way. I got into type when I was 18. That was back in 2011, winter 2011. Some friends, we were trying to work on an English assignment, and I thought I had ADHD. My God, and they ended up pulling out the MBTI and human-metrics. We went through it. I found a link to Keirsey's book, and I bought it. I think like the next week. Please understand me too. That was my first intro as well. And that just made a cascade. I read that like literally probably 10 times and taken incessant notes on those. I've read all of Keirsey's works. Read Myers, Jung, Nardi, and Berens. Got into the objective personality. It's just truly a wonderful system that if I could get paid just to study this stuff, I mean, I would. So guys, I need your secrets. I really do. On the typical INFP, I just have no money. I'm very excited to be here, and hopefully keep the jokes to a minimum, which unfortunately is going to be still quite copious. But we'll see until Joyce shuts me down. If you see my mic getting muted, I didn't do that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, just no. I'm kidding. No, I'm just.
I was in shock.
Thank you. Okay.
I was in shock when you started to make the joke about I'm an INFP, so I have no money. If anyone doesn't get that reference, INFPs like
INFPs get it. INFPs get it.
INFPs get it. Yeah.
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
They really do.
If you check out Trudy's annual salary survey, you'll see that INFPs are the lowest on paycheck. Oh, that was too funny. Okay.
It's real. It's real.
Hi, my name's Joyce, and I'm a certified MBTI practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. I also type and coach people. And so my journey into type was I had an ENFP best friend, and she typed me, and she typed everyone we knew, my family members, schoolmates, every single person. And so she told me, you can take a test, but tests are normally wrong. I already know your type. You're an INFJ. So it was kind of like an FI statement of love. It's like, I know you better than you know yourself. And so look at how much I know you, friend. But it came across as really blunt and TE. And so that's what got me into type, because she told me things about myself that no one really understood, and it was from typology. And there was this kind of catalyst bond that we shared together. There's this type of idealism when NFs get together. They discuss together about their sorrows with the world and how the world could be made a better place. So it's almost like NFs are really emotionally naked with each other. And so through my emotionally naked relationship with my ENFP, I just learned to be naked in general. So, and so an NF value is emotional nakedness, and so they really want to. I hear a noise. I hear like a doop, 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 doop. Sorry.
Was it this?
Yes.
I was trying to mute the Telegram notifications because then I thought you'd like be off with my head if it came out.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm like this. It's not
No,
you.
no, it's not. No, that's not bad. You're allowed to be like you're allowed to have an infection. I just love the irony that I was trying so hard to do something for you, and then I kind of committed the offense I was trying to avoid committing. God, having TE last is hard because it's like God made stupid people. You know.
You have to keep these parts, Joyce. Just make them black and white or something.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Interesting.
Joyce, if it makes you feel better, I have extreme, I don't know about you guys, but I have extreme auditory sensitivity. And it is not fun. It took me years to figure out why I couldn't sleep in hotels. I have to wear my Bose headphones and have music playing to sleep in a hotel. So it is not fun, but you don't have to apologize for your sensitivity. We tend to have that. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
I'm not making fun of you, Bethel. Sorry, no, I was just trying to make jokes so people think I have value as a person. That's it. It's not. I'm kidding. No, you're doing good, Joyce.
Cool. Yeah. So back to the topic of emotional nakedness, something that NF shares a desire to be more vulnerable, to be more open, and to facilitate deep conversations. So it's almost like piercingly deep conversation is a need almost. And oftentimes NFs kind of feel like that need for spiritual, emotional, philosophical, conceptual depth is not met. And so there can be an inner angst or inner something missing that you can feel and that you'll try to express to other people, but they'll never really understand it. So it's kind of like this desire for depth of connection, depth of intensity, of bond, being able to kind of talk to someone theoretically and have someone actually like throw the ball back to you and build on your theoreticalness. Like, because oftentimes NFs will just have people either listen to their theoretics and go like, yeah, or people don't accept it. So either way, it's still unsatisfying. Like one is the other party isn't adding to the theoretical thought, which makes it a little empty, but it's still nice that the other party accepts it. And then the other one is just blatant disregard for idealism that the NF has. And so oftentimes the NF will go through a push and pull between that. And it's nice to kind of be finally at home, with other NFs that see these ways in which life can be a little better for souls on the earth, and that it's possible to change the world through idealism, as NFs really want to believe, because it's almost like NFs live in a state of fantasy. Like they see how the world could be this fantasy that they see. And so they're oftentimes trying to chase this better image of the world, because that image of the world feels more real than reality itself. And so, yeah.
You have to play Mariah Carey's Fantasy at the end of the video now. No, but it is good to be with other NFs where you're not going to get the two default responses of or yes, I hear you. You're saying words. I mean, like neither way, right?
Yeah, and so that brings me to my first question for everyone, and it's, what are some of the traits you think NFs share with each other in general? If you were to hypothesize things that NFs share.
The idealism, that's a fantasy. That's a huge one. The intuition with the feeling, it gives rise to this vision of possibilities that have a higher value than what is current. I think where we can often butt heads with other temperaments is sometimes the refusal to accept reality as it is. When someone says, "Oh, that's just the way it is," I go into like a brief like violent rage, and then I have to pull back. I'm just kidding. My social worker helped me. That's part of a joke. I did that, but I did actually have anger issues when I was a kid. When I was in 6th grade, I had to work with a social worker, and I realized the boys I was sitting with and got, oh my god, I got to really, really check this. It was not like a not a bully or anything, but I was just always angry at the world because I saw that it was not what it could be. People didn't treat each other the way that they could treat each other. Our systems were not set up to allow people to flourish in a way that could be. It so often seems like there is the world that we have. There's a kind of mirror to it that's just a little better. I think what we might have to do as NS is try to connect the two and try to sort of make them one and the same. Trying to sort of in a the Rogerian sense, like Carl Rogers, but a little more cosmic, trying to bring the actual existence and the ideal existence to become one and the same. And I think that can result in some anger and frustration, regardless of whether it's more contained or whether it's more expressed. Still looking at me. Should I say more? Usually I say too much. What'd you do?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Y'all are just gonna have to forgive her. She's an ESFJ 3 6-year-old. And I've been trying to teach her how to speak quietly, and she just can't fathom that. So so I'm sorry, Joyce. You might have to, that might be the only thing that you have to like bear with. But aside from that, to add on to what you were saying, yeah, I agree with everything that what Paul was saying. And to be honest, I feel like that's like the biggest thing, like that intuitive feeling together is just really what creates the biggest punch, because it's this focus on the philosophical, conceptual, abstract nature of how we either interpersonally connect or our core values. And then how can we not only define these abstract things, but then also improve them over time and continue to improve them. So it's kind of like what Paul was saying once again, like, we have this ideal, but then we also have like what the world really is, and we're never really satisfied. So I actually, the way that I've always thought about it is, and I made a video about this one time, I called it the carrot of idealism. And it's pretty much like how you have a donkey and then you have a carrot that's like right in front of the donkey, and the donkey is like continuously going after that carrot. And I feel like that's how us as idealists, like that's how we are, like that's what's going to keep us going. We're never going to arrive at that carrot, and that's unfortunately what it is. But what that carrot does is it helps us to look back and we're like, whoa, look at how far we came. And even though we might, I feel like as NFs, we kind of already, we do know the reality that we might never get to that carrot, but we at least, the paradox of it all is believing that if we get to that, believing that if we can get to that carrot, that's what causes the difference. So like, actually, I was at a museum recently, and they had like a whole bunch of like artifacts of like, things that Martin Luther King Jr., who I personally believe was an ENFJ, so a fellow NF, like a lot of things that he like wrote and everything, like when he was back in college, high school, all of that. And then he actually wrote, I think this was, I forgot what this one was, but he wrote this, and I saved it in my phone. Like we weren't allowed to take pictures, but I wrote this whole thing out because I was just like, this is just so good. So I'm going to try to read through it like really quickly, but I feel like this really captures it. He said, "I refuse to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history. I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. I refuse to accept the idea that man is mere flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, unable to influence the unfolding events which surround him. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I refuse to accept the cynical notion that the nation after nation must spiral down a militaristic stairway into the hell of thermonuclear destruction. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. And I think that's to me is like NF, like just like what Paul was saying, like people saying like, that's just life. No, I refuse. That's just humanity. No, I refuse. Like, well, hey Martin, like people have been racist for years. That's just how it's been. No, I refuse. Like, man, people are just always going to think in this stupid way. No, I refuse. Like, I feel like that's what NF is. It's like I'm going to chase that carrot. And even if I never get that carrot, when I look back, I'm going to see how far it's brought me. And that's more, that's, if anything, that's rewarding enough. So that's how I view, like, I think that's what all of the NFs have in common. Like we refuse to accept ideals in the way that we interpersonally connect just as they are. We want to continue to improve them. And once we get to where that carrot once was, the carrot has now moved forward naturally. So we're just going to perpetually be trying to improve things in those regards.
Yeah. And so there's a restlessness to NF, because when you see how the world could be, you're always a little bit restless for what could be. And oftentimes the carrot feels more real than reality itself. At the forefront of your brain is actually the ideal potential of the world. And so with great burden comes great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility. And so
yeah,
NFs kind of have this unseen mental weight that they carry because they are aware of wanting to make the world a better place. That's like something the mind cannot stop fixating on, almost. And so oftentimes this abstraction that NFs are very close to, because they're very close to the abstraction of how the world could be, that's also how they feel intimacy too. So sometimes the most intimate an NF can feel is if they're kind of mind, soul, heart merging with you. So they're almost intimate with the theoretical essence of who you are. So almost understanding you more abstractly feels like incredibly intimate to NFs. And so oftentimes they might, in relationships, push for that. They're like, all right, I want to understand the abstract concept that is you, and I also want you to understand the abstract concept that is me. And that will feel like a form of intimacy that I seek. And yeah. Carol, I was wondering what your thoughts were on sharing.
First of all, I agree with everything everybody said. We're doing. I was on a broadcast once of Ben in London, and somebody commented on it. He had introduced me to another catalyst, and we were just going off each other. And somebody wrote, "What an NF love fest those two are having," and that didn't even occur to me. But it's like us here. We're like there's a place where we resonate, the four of us together with that catalyst core. So I guess it does look like a love fest to somebody from another temperament, but it just feels like the best of reality to me when we get to do that. Denzel, thank you for reading the Martin Luther King quote. I don't think it's an accident that Martin Luther King and Gandhi were both catalysts. Neither one of them held a political position or held a military position. And they both changed the freaking world in ways that few people have ever risen to. I don't think that's an accident that both of them are catalysts. In addition to everything you said, I was thinking a couple of things. I wanted to know if y'all had a similar experience. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody told me, "Oh, you're just being too sensitive."
Oh my God, I can pay my rent with that. Yeah.
When I was young, it was just like shredded me. It was so painful. And as I got older and I started doing what I do for a living, work. First, I led teams as a technical writing manager, and then I ended up accidentally moving myself into my dream career, which was to teaching and coaching for a living. And I finally realized, my sensitivity is an Achilles heel. It's my strength, and it's the weak place, and it's the place of source of pain. And when I teach, I would talk about it's like there's a series of invisible tentacles that go out from my chest, and they have sensors on the end of them, and there are like 10,000 of them, and they pick up everything going on in the room. And it's just overwhelming. Sometimes, guys, I have to shut the world out for a while because I'm seeing not, there's just, it's like, whoa, there's too much coming in, and the suffering of the world and the tragic things, it gets to be too much. And I don't want to, it feels irresponsible just to shut off from the world and not be aware. But there are times, guys, I have to give myself a break. Like, I don't listen to the news Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night. I listen every morning and the other evenings. But you know what? I need some downtime. But when I'm teaching, I'm talking about, when I'm teaching temperaments, talking about catalysts, I talk about the sensors. And, the people with intuitive feeling preferences in the room, they start doing this. They start silently nodding. And then I say, and if anyone has ever found the off button for these sensors, please tell me where it is, because I can't find it, and I would love to be able to turn it. And then they laugh. But guys, seriously, I don't know where the off button is, and it's a source of pain. It's also at the same time why I can do some of the things I can do in a room that help people. It's because I'm picking up on all that. So I just have to, it's both and, but I finally got it that, we're like 12% of the population. We do have a level of sensitivity. There's some other folks, other temperaments that have heightened sensitivity, but we're kind of really up there. And I just realized, I have just to accept the fact that I look too sensitive to those other people, but I just had to not let that get to me, because my sensitivity is part of my strength as well as part of my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, and I'm seeing by your nodding, it's like understanding, it's painful, and we have to value it. But I've learned, Joyce, I had my feelings hurt way too many times to put it all out there all the time, which is one of the reasons I love being in the type community, because I get to be who I am in the type community. Like, I get to be who I am with you guys, right? I'm, been going to APT International things for years. I'm on the board. I published the journal. One of the reasons I'm such a part of the type community is they're my tribe. You get to be who you are. And I have a set of friends I consider, I'm not interested in this is for y'all too. I have a set of friends that my phrase for them is, I don't have to edit myself. And that's a very small number. It's less than 5. But they're like 5. Well, that's not counting the type community. These are personal friends. These are friends not from the type community. There's way more there. But there's just a handful of people that I'm talking, and these are friends I've had for years. It's like, I open my mouth and I just let my pure catalyst stuff come out, because the rest of the world can think that's weird, but it's such a relief to be in friendship with somebody that you can open your mouth and just let what your heart is saying come out. And I call that my friends I don't have to edit anything with. And I just value the gift of those people in my life so much.
Yeah, so sensitivity shows that you care, and the world kind of needs people who care more sometimes, because there's a culture of overstimulation, and what overstimulation does is it desensitizes you. So when you actually see something that is wrong, you're so used to wrong that it's easier to dull out your care, because after a while of seeing so much, you become jaded, and then after a while your emotions actually become numbed to it if it's too much in media. But NFs never really get over the sensitive phase. They're perpetually, eternally sensitive. Especially the FI NFs, though.
I want to mention, Carol, when you asked where the off button is, it's so tempting to search for that. And yet, finding that off button is akin to your psycho-spiritual death. That kind of reminds me of a good friend of mine, Professor Charles Xavier from the X-Men. Likely an ENFJ, in Days of Future Past. That film it had a time travel element. So you had the young Xavier still struggling with his powers, and okay, so we've seen it. Good, we're in good company. I think the most poignant scene is where the young Charles meets the old Charles, and he's just saying, so much agony, so much pain, right? I close my eyes and it nearly overwhelms me. And then the older Xavier tells his younger self that kind of it's really his gift, and it's his burden, or sorry, it's his gift to bear the burdens of others in a way that others can't. So as much as that is a serious point of pain, that is also what makes you exceptional, and I would say with purpose. So it can be so hard to find that. It's often so much easier to shut off those feelings, that idealism, just to go through the world. I'm going to sound like an IP, but blend into the system, and have go through life without that sensitivity. But then that life would be sort of meaningless in a way. That's what you bring to the world, and it's really nice that you found a way to use that authentically. So when you do expose that core part of yourself, it's met with embracing. It's met with joy, met with understanding, rather than there's something wrong with this person, right? Like you said, you always called sensitive. I also got psycho a lot when I was a kid, but I mean, yeah, it can be very challenging when your emotions, like you're trying to take on the burdens of other people, and it becomes very very emotionally complicated. So I feel that.
I've been introduced to the concept years ago that some of us are more emotional sponges than others, and we can Catalyst, I think we're very prone to this as a group, and our boundaries. I mean, I feel like one of the lessons from my lifetime is learning to have healthy boundaries. Okay, not walls, but healthy boundaries, because I have absolutely exhausted myself at some times in the past, unconsciously trying to take on other people's stuff. And guys, it literally can make you physically ill. I've had it have health consequences. So I don't want to get hardened, but I've had to learn there are places I can open up and be all of who I am. And there are places, some places in groups I choose not to go in and be a part of, because it's not that I don't have the strength to, but there's so much negative stuff coming in that it takes so much energy to keep it out, that it's like depleting me to go be a part of that. So I pick my arenas. Used to pick my arenas where I would open up or not. I still do that, but more now, I pick what arenas I choose to be a part of, because it's draining to be a part of arenas that are too much. Last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up here. I considered at one point being some kind of one-on-one therapist person, kind of one of the fields. And I get it that, for example, I know some people who are professional social workers, and I just imagine doing a day of that and coming home and feeding the cat and getting in bed and pulling the covers up over my head. Because I get it. I could not keep it out. It would come in, and it would be I would have burnout so quickly. So I don't consider doing the therapy where did anybody watch In Treatment on HBO? Oh my God,
Fantastic show.
I loved it, but I realized I couldn't be Paul sitting in that chair, because of course he had trouble with keeping it appropriate in his life too, right? I think that's the unhealed healer, right? But I got it. I'm here to do group work, have one-on-one heart-to-hearts, but a whole do group work and help groups do healing. But I couldn't choose the path. It would not be healthy for me to choose the path of one-on-one helping people solve problems in therapy, because I wouldn't know how to keep their energy out of my field and it would deplete me. And so instead of contributing, Paul, it would be just draining me. So I've had to realize because of the sensitivity, I have to pick places where I can stay healthy and resourceful and be useful instead of try to do situations that would deplete me so much I wouldn't be helpful to people. So I did have to learn that.
Comments that ENFPs get a lot is that they're too much, either directly or indirectly, because they're also very extremely high energy NFs too. And so sometimes NFness can actually be too much, in the sense that, NFs are told as a life message to kind of water themselves down because people don't understand their idealism. And also they seem like they don't have common sense all the time, because when you have these grand ideas for how reality could be, you look like someone who's not having their feet firmly planted on the ground. And so people will kind of just disregard you as someone who doesn't have real world common sense, when really NF sense should be more common sense one day, or more commonplace, because it might give people a little hope in creating ways that are more functional in the world, that are best for everyone's souls. So it's kind of elevating the vibe of the world collectively together. The combination of being sensitive and having people be mean to you because you're this way equals depression and anxiety. So a lot of NFs, I think, at some point may have felt depression. This is generalizing, of course. I'm not saying all NFs are depressed, but I'm saying that there may be some level of base dissatisfaction or sadness that they may not be voicing out loud. This is true of a lot of people too, but I feel like NFs have it for a specific reason. So everyone can have it, but it comes from a different place. And so the ENFP type is actually really good at hiding its sadness. So ENFPs will be actually really depressed sometimes, and to other people they might appear really happy, because ENFPs don't want to bring down other people. So what they'll do is they'll mask their emotions. It's called the sad clown syndrome, actually, and Robin Williams is a good example of that.
Studying the Enneagram with Catherine Faber, it seems that ENFP, I'll just touch Enneagram and get off of it, okay? But on this topic you're mentioning, it's very common to have ENFP preference folks who lead with Enneagram 7, which is about going for the high energy and what's the positive side here. And oh my God, when my experience of reading Enneagram 7 was just as revelatory as ENFP and Keirsey and Linden Berens, I thought, oh my God, that is me. And it's part of what's gotten me through some of the worst things in my life. So I know it at times, Joyce, I get it. It makes me look the ENFP high, and we're going to get through this, and we may go to hell in a handbasket together, but by God, we're going to have a good time getting there. That's my ENFP interior slogan there. And I know it looks unrealistic to some people, and you're right, Joyce. I did learn in corporate America. I learned in my certain arenas to reel in my ENFP out there, because if it wasn't going to be helpful in some situations to be my unfettered self. So I learned to pick my areas where I could safely be my unfettered self in areas I didn't. So I'm grateful for I am really totally just unrealistically optimistic, and I get that about myself, okay? There's nothing realistic about my optimism, but my unrealistic optimism has got me through some of the most amazing things in my life. So it has its usefulness. I had fibromyalgia for 30 years, and they tell you they don't know what causes it and it's incurable. And I just decided, you can't tell me that the greatest power in the universe and I can't solve this. Don't even try to tell me that. That seemed irrational. Paul's laughing at me. That seemed irrational to me. How can you so I spent
That was more like a amen.
Yeah, thank you. So I spent 30 years. I'm serious. I spent 30 years battling fibromyalgia, and I did conquer it, and my body doesn't express it anymore. And I don't think I could have done that without my irrational optimism. Because all the medical authorities were telling me, this is hopeless. You can't do it. Just take this medicine. And I twice came close to going on medical disability. And both times the deciding factor was, one thing was one little thing helped me with my symptoms to keep going on. And the other thought was, I absolutely refuse to give up. If I go to my grave battling this, I will go to my grave with my freaking boots on. I am not going to give up that I can't conquer this. And with some wonderful resources I got sent by the universe, I did. But we have to yes, Joyce, I value getting to be who I am, which is one of the reasons I'm thankful to be here. But there are arenas in which it just doesn't help to be my unfettered self because it's so alien. You have to meet people where they are. And so I try to bring positive energy and valuing other people, but sometimes that's all I can bring because that's all the arena I'm walking into can handle, if that makes any sense. I'll be quiet now.
That was all really beautiful, Carol. And so ENFPs are probably the most optimistic of all types. And Carol is really great at demonstrating that as well. And sometimes it's what's needed to find a cure for that fibromyalgia you were dealing with, which I'm so proud that you got over. Also, I will just set stage for a 5-minute washroom break.
Love you so much. Thank you. My bladder thanks you. Guys, we're all so in sync with our intuition. We all have to be at the same time.
I taught in the software industry for 6 years. And so I used a phrase I knew they'd understand. I called it, we're going to take a 10-minute input-output break. And they all got it.
Very nice, very nice, very nice, very nice. Well, I mean, although, let's be honest, if it was both input and output, that would be, man, that metabolism would be, like, raging to the point of sickly, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
This is my input. This was the input part of my break.
That's fair. Makes sense. So you did output then input. Doesn't have to be input to get you out. I don't know, but I'm thinking last. I don't understand, software, math, and stuff. I just get sad about stuff.
Like input-output breaks would make sense. Like maybe someone keeps a jar of mints next to their toilet. I don't know. Like 8 mints on my toilet. Okay, sir.
Wow. I mean, wow. What area of the body is going to be minty fresh? Probably two at that point.
No, I'm going so many more places than I intended with that. So many more.
Aren't you kind of glad it did? This is fun. This is fun.
Cool. Okay, back on track. Cool. Awesome stuff. And so I'm wondering,
we're like best friends, so I can make fun of her like that. Because I do it on her own. But Joyce, I love you. You're the greatest, right?
yeah.
I'm just jealous of you, basically, all the time. I want to be you when I grow up, and I'm like 3 years old. No, 3 years older than you. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay, whatever.
My gosh, Paul. And yeah, so really great conversation, everyone. And so I was wondering, are there any other NF traits you'd like to mention? Anything else you believe that these types might share together?
Just to piggyback off of what Carol was saying, I think that it once again, it goes back to that carrot thing, which we were talking about. Like, if you did not have that irrational optimism, then you wouldn't have gotten to where you were. And I feel like that's what everything just kind of like circles back to. And this goes into like every situation. In fact, I don't know how much this goes with like y'all, but for me, for example, I realized that even though I know that Joyce may not relate too much because she is a what's the word? Self-said when you say it yourself. I forgot what the term is, but she claims herself to be pretty much like low-key a cynic. So maybe as an INFJ with higher TI, like you, that would be like different. But for me, it's I like naturally just trust people. And so even though like something in me will kind of be like, they're probably going to play you, or that's probably not like going to go the way that it is. I also have this like understanding that, or this belief, I guess I should say, that if I operate as if I truly do believe this situation is going to carry out the way that I'm hoping for it to, then it actually will. But if I allow my doubts of this person, of this situation, whatever it might be, to actually show itself in any way, then it's going to subconsciously influence the situation. It's going to subconsciously influence that person. If I'm like, if something in me is thinking all the time, like, Paul is fake, and I just don't really like him in this way and this, that, and then I don't do well to keep that part of me or whatever like pushed down, then it could bleed into our dynamic, and then it could cause a self-fulfilling prophecy, where now, because Paul's been getting these small like subconscious like hints like, yo, Denzel, you think this way of me, now he might act in a way, and then I'm going to think to myself like, yeah, see, I knew you were fake, I knew you were going to leave me eventually, I knew. And it's like, well, if you really look over your the way that you treated him, no wonder he left, because you kind of made him feel like this already. But just like how there's like bad self-fulfilling prophecies, there's also good ones. So if you're like, again, like, I refuse to believe that Paul is fake. I believe that this is what's going to happen. I believe that love will prevail, whatever it might be. Then I think that's what's going to cause also self-fulfilling prophecy, to where it's like, again, like, it's irrational. But I don't know how many of you may have like seen like Raya the Last Dragon. But I think that the main character in there, she was an EFP. I forgot if she was ESFP or ENFP. I lean on ESFP though. But her father was an ENFJ in my opinion as well. And this isn't much of a spoiler because you have to like watch the movie to really understand, but he just had this irrational, which ENFJs tend to, like this irrational view of like, just trust everyone. Nobody's going to really play you, like, and it's like this naivety of some sort, like, just trust. The more that we show people that we trust them, then the more that they're going to not want to take advantage of that trust. And it's like, I feel like we all low-key know like that's not 100% true. Like, there's a lot of wicked people out there who will be like, oh, this naive guy, like, he trusts me so much. Like, watch me be a Scar to Mufasa, and play the mess out of him. You know what I mean? But I feel like there's also like a truth to that, where it's like, if you operate like you really do trust people, it's like, man, why do you still trust me so much? Like, after all the reasons I've given you not to, I think I just want to become this person that you already believe me to be. Like, because this is like, you have so much faith in me. And I feel like that's what it is. Like, when you have that faith in someone, when you have faith in like humanity in an irrational way, that the NTs will probably be like, don't trust anyone. Or like, maybe even like, again, like some higher TI types, like, don't trust anyone. And they're right to an extent, but it's like, no, the paradox is, if you treat a lot of people as if you do trust them, then even if they're not trustworthy, somehow that'll change them to become trustworthy. And then that'll change your doubts as well. And that's something that I've like always like noticed about myself. Like, because then, yeah, like, spoiler alert, which we'd all would have guessed anyway, by the end of the movie, like, you find out like, dang, you were right all along, Dad. Like, if we just learn to like forgive and we learn to like trust people, then this might be. It came with some consequences, but at the end of the day, again, like, you were right. Like, and if you did not have this irrational belief, then we wouldn't have arrived over here. So I feel like that's, again, like we really are called to be the irrational people of the world as NFs. And it's our irrationality that causes the impossible to be done. Just like how with SPs, it's like, there's no way that you can jump 30 feet in the air. And the next thing you know, like, the SPs, they have this irrational thought, like, I could do this. And now we see people in the Olympics doing crazy stuff, It's like every temperament has their own like irrational thing. Even like the rational types, they have their own irrational thing. Like looking back in the past, I believe that what's that dude's name? The Tesla guy. I forgot his name. Well,
Elon Musk.
yes,
Tesla.
Elon Musk.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you really meant Tesla.
Nikola Tesla?
Yeah.
Well, that is a reasonable confusion to have.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I believe that Elon Musk is an NT, so he's a rational type. But people could probably look at him and be, there's no way that you can make a car that drives itself. That's an irrational thing to think about. And then next thing you know, look at what he did. So it's like everyone has their own irrational thing, and we're as NFs, we just have the irrational, the progression of humanity, I think. So like when we have that ideal, that irrational ideal, then that's what we create. And that's what we've been given the responsibility for. So yeah. And then just like what Joyce was also saying, which for me, well, I think all of us kind of like alluded to this. Like for me as an ENFJ, like the most, like for me, every single waking moment of the day, like literally, I want to spend it in depth of connection. Whether that be with somebody else, or now I've been like, learning, especially as an Enneagram 9, to like turn that inward as well. But I just always I just love that. Like that's where my extroversion like really comes out. Like spend time by myself or spend time deeply connecting with somebody else. It's like I'm gonna choose that. Like let me explore your mind, let me explore your heart, let me explore your values, let me see the world through your eyes. Like nakedness is like, again, like that's what I'm always wanting from someone, and I want them to be able to trust me to like slowly, metaphorically, like strip everything and see like, wow, like most people usually gasp as soon as they see this scar, or they usually, like laugh when they see like how, frail I am in this area or whatever. But like, you didn't even bat an eyelash. In fact, you kissed my scar for me. You asked the story behind it, kind of thing. There's something different about you. And then from there, I'm able to also, like start doing my own metaphorical stripping. And then that's how intimacy is created. And in that non-judgmental place, even if we disagree on certain things, at the end of the day, it's like, no, but I can understand where you're coming from because you've allowed me to be able to see the world through your eyes. And that's the depth of connection that I'm always seeking. And I feel like that is a very big like NF ideal. Like everybody loves to connect deeply, sure. But I do think that that's something that NFs are like constantly like looking for. They're constantly looking for that depth of connection and emotional, interpersonal rawness and nakedness between each other, because then it creates this euphoric way of just being able to relate.
Yeah. NF's desire state of communion with ideals, with others, and themselves. Like NFs want a communion of ideals almost. And so with the trusting people, like, and being innately trusting is definitely an NF trait. By the way, Denzel, I'm very innately trusting of people. Oh, it makes me so sad when I get called cynical, Denzel.
I'm sorry. Wait, no, I thought you've definitely said that before. I pay attention
Self-proclaimed
to you.
cynic. You said that before sometimes.
Yeah, you've said that. Like you're like, no, I don't trust people like Denzel. Like I'm always thinking like, this person's this, or like this is that. I'm always like skeptical of people. And I think especially when you identified as a 6. So I was like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. It's not that you don't trust people at all, but like you said that like you specifically said like one difference between me and you is that I'm more like naive toward people, whereas like for you have more of like a kind of thing. So I don't want this to be a situation where it's like, oh, I read you wrong, but it's like I distinctly remember you saying that because I always like take these notes in my mind. So
Yeah,
maybe that's changed.
Yeah, I think both notes can be true. Like, here's the thing, like, I'm really good at holding paradoxes in my head because I don't think they're paradoxes. So oftentimes people think that two things cannot exist at the same time, which I totally think can exist at the same time. I can both be cynical and trusting at the same time, and that doesn't have to contradict itself. I can be cynical about people and the longevity of relationships just because I don't believe that people stay forever. And I believe that people oftentimes they either go off on their own path or they die, right? And so I'm cynical about that. And I'm cynical about people's integrity. I don't think people typically have integrity with their word, but I'm not cynical about people's potential and like trusting them to be a certain way or to be their full self, or that like it's kind of complicated. So I have a hard time kind of articulating myself, which makes it so
As long as you know that, like, yeah, like I wasn't trying to like just randomly call you cynical like in that way, but like
yeah,
it was something that you self-admitted. That's the word I wanted to say earlier, the term. Like I
yeah.
distinctly remember us having a conversation about that, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And yeah, but I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, sorry. I'm easily kind of like feel sadness there, because like when people think I'm INTJ, that actually makes me really sad too, because I feel like a fluffy marshmallow, and then people tell me that I'm not a fluffy marshmallow.
Yeah,
It's kind
no.
of like someone telling me I'm something that I like. After a while, I get like kind of hurt by it, because it's like, wow, I'm just a broken person. No one can really
Well,
tell who I
I
am.
will. You don't have to cut this part out, but I'll just say that anybody who does believe that you're an INTJ by any chance is either stupid, doesn't know you, or just doesn't know type, or maybe all of the above. Because, like, what? No, that's just not. No, definitely do not. They do not know you. Even when I just said that, oh yeah, you have a cynicism to you. There's a different kind of cynicism that you have than what INTJs usually have. So no, that's not the type of cynicism that I was talking about. I was just talking about more of like a probably I would be more likely to be played by someone than you would, because you're more skeptical of people in that regard. Whereas like I'm more naive toward their motives. Even if I might be like aware of it, it's like I naturally would create less of a defense toward it, because I want to believe that they won't do that. And that's how I saw like your quote unquote cynicism. It's like, no, I'm more aware of like what they can do, and I'm going to create more of a defense against that. But it doesn't mean that you don't trust that they can change. It's just that it's a higher level of I don't really trust, which to me I was like, oh, that makes sense. Higher TI.
Yeah,
Appreciate you clarifying that.
yeah,
Anyway. And
yeah.
no, I don't think that you're a cold, cynical, robotic type of person. No.
Yeah, computer noob. It's okay, Paul. I'm gonna cut this part out anyway. So I just wanted to clarify.
Beautiful speech, though.
Yeah, I
just
think
kidding,
you should keep that. That was a good clarification.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's like my deep insecurities. I don't want it on the internet.
Can I say something that may help with that?
Yeah.
Okay, Dick Thompson taught me this. I attended he teaches something he calls communication wheel, and he teaches the 8 functions to think of the 8 functions as if they're languages, because we're using different verbiage and we're talking about different things based on the function we're speaking from at the time. And I did the extroverted thinking exercise, and I opened my mouth and pure extroverted thinking flowed out. And I thought, oh my God, how did that happen? And my partner said, oh, you really did do it. And I asked Dick, and you and I both have, you have introverted thinking in the 3rd function. I have extroverted thinking in the 3rd function. And I said, Dick, how is it I could go there? And so, extroverted intuition and introverted feeling, extroverted thinking. And for you, the second one is extroverted feeling. Well, those are FI and FE are both very vulnerable functions. And he said it actually is a way to protect ourselves when it's not safe. Paul's nodding at me. When it's not safe to stay in introverted feeling or extroverted feeling, a safe place to go that gives us a little distance and protection for you is introverted thinking, and for me is extroverted thinking. So I've known, I was in the software industry, so that's a certain group of people. But I knew a lot of people with INFJ preferences. First place, y'all are cerebral, okay? I mean, leading with introverted intuition. And it's okay to go into your introverted thinking. That's okay. That's a strength that you have that developed. And Dick said it's just a smart place to go when it's too vulnerable to stay in the feeling function. So it's okay, Joyce, if you come across as cerebral sometimes. It's not a flaw.
It feels like a flaw, trust me.
It's not a flaw.
Like it really does. Like I feel like I shouldn't be alive when people point it out. Like it literally makes me like a little bit like, why am I alive? Yeah, so that's my deepest insecurity right there. I feel like a warm person, but it doesn't show because I'm dead inside, and I know that, and I don't know how to fix it. And so I feel like a sense of desperation in myself because I don't feel like I'm good enough in any way. It's so sad.
Mine's snakes.
No,
No, I'm kidding. It's actually death, and that we don't know what happens. But like this is if you're in this state, this is a season in your life. You probably, I mean, you've spent a while, and you're always in your NI, and you spent a while in your FE, and for some reason you're in your TI a lot right now. Probably that's why you seem like an INTJ. I mean, one, if they like, if they're trying to tell you what type they think you are as a way to slight you, they can, politely, respectfully go fuck themselves. I mean, like, it shouldn't matter. Like, there's a way you come across to people. Sometimes, sure, you come across to different things because you're actually a person. You have different parts and different situations. Crazy. Not that you come off crazy, of course. That's my job in a friendship. But they, I mean, that's someone they can think what they want, but. It is hard to be. It's hard to be a feeler. It's hard to be a feeler because it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Especially FE.
And like I said, Joyce, earlier, like if they think that, then they really don't know you because you're super feeler to me, and maybe it's just because me and you have a different dynamic than how you might come off to whoever be saying this stuff to you, but also. That's compliments. You know what I mean? Like, again, like I know that you said that, like, oh yeah, when people view me that way, then it makes me feel some type. Well, people at my old job, they were literally like telling me that they think I'm an ISTP pretty much. Like, and it's like, wow, like I could take that as like, oh my gosh, you think that I'm a censor? Wait, you think that I have FE last, like that type of thing? Or I could be like, oh, that's interesting. That's a different side, Right. I know people who would be like, what? ISTP? But it's just like, okay, cool. Like either way, I'm me. I'm still as awesome as I am. You're still as awesome as you are. And yeah, Joyce, you do have a pretty sharp TI. But that doesn't mean that you also do not have like a very strong, like passionate FE side to you. At the end of every single video, you give a whole FE shotgun to everyone. What INTJ does that? Like that's just not, it doesn't. Yeah. So I'd say embrace all of those sides, both your cerebral and your more fluffy side, because I think that we see both, and even if they're saying like, oh yeah, INTJ or whatever, INTJs have soft sides to them too. So it's not like that shouldn't be an insult. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't be offended if someone called me the smartest type.
Yeah, the mastermind.
Oh, thinks they are.
The strategist.
Yeah, there are layers to that I don't want to waste our whole recording kind of going into, so I'm not gonna go into it. But yeah, but thanks everyone.
Joyce, at the risk of saying something silly that you may have to cut out, there's this Taylor Swift song about haters gonna hate. And it makes me laugh.
Shake it off. Shake it off.
It is also very useful because that helps me, when somebody criticizes something about me or something I believe in, I can go inside and go, yeah, haters gonna hate. That is not about me. That is about them.
Yeah.
So Taylor Swift just makes me smile and helps me get a bit of healthy distance when, most of what other people think or say is saying way more about them than it's saying about us when they think they're talking about us. So haters gonna hate, and it's not about us.
And players gonna play. You just gotta shake it off. The philosophical writings of T Swift always change things for you. I mean, it could be malice, like it could be like they're trying to hate you, or they just don't understand type well enough, right? And then, instead of going, oh my god, you think of it in type, you can just think, oh, That's cute. Okay, sure. So cute. You're trying to know type.
And Paul, I think that's a real good point there. Some of the things people say to us about type that is insensitive or really hurtful is said out of a lack of knowledge. Like Denzel said, oh my God, that is so far off base. And people will say really hurtful things sometimes that they don't get that it's hurtful. So there's a distance between what they were intending and how something came off. So that's part of the way. It's not just all about hating, but people sometimes say things that come across as very insensitive, and they just they don't get it. So again, that's saying something about their skill. I mean, I've had to spend a lot of time, with the sensitivity, putting some distance between myself and not letting myself be negatively impacted, because you're just jerked around by the world if you're constantly being negatively impacted by other people's stuff. And where I go to with that is I can forgive I consider that when people do things like that, it's unskillful.
Yeah.
And I can forgive anybody for being unskillful. God knows I've been unskillful. So it just helps me go to a place that was an unskillful thing they said, and I don't have to let that get inside me. For what that's worth.
Yeah, and you're just know that you're warm. That's pretty much the main point. The biggest thing that you feared was, oh my gosh, I don't come off as warm. No, you do. I feel like if anything, those people are just saying that you're too smart to be an INFJ. That's pretty much what they're saying. They're probably not saying that you're not warm enough. And if they do think that you're not warm enough, well, then again, they don't know you. So that's the main thing. So no, you do not come off as if you're super cold and stuff like that, Joyce.
No.
So please don't internalize that BS.
Yeah. Like I'm fine with being called any type in the sense that I think all types are equal. Like, so I don't think one type is better than the other. But what I'm triggered by, and I know it's just me getting triggered, is that it's just kind of like feeling like you're cold and emotionless when you're not. So what it feels like is, you want to see yourself as a godly person, but let's say people always tell you that you're ungodly. It's kind of like that. It's like after a while, what it implies kind of hurts. Not the exact title itself, but how it implies that, like, if you're religious, like, oh, you want to be godly, and someone's like indirectly telling you, I don't see that in you, but like kind of like that type of thing. But anyways, yeah, it's fine. Sorry, thank you. I appreciate it. And so on a different note, if someone was trying to tell apart these 4 types, how would they go about spotting your type? Or differentiating it from other types around it that are NF.
ENFJ is the one that's cool. ENFP is the one that's fun at parties. INFJ is the one that stares at you strangely from the corner. And the INFP is the one crying in the other corner. Done. Easy.
I've been unduly influenced perhaps by Linden Berens. I've been studying with her for years, and I go to interaction style is not a theoretical framework to me. It like lives and breathes in people. And ENFP, it's, I'm just, I have a classic presentation of get things going. It's that energy. It's a high, it's a fast energy, and it's not all good, right? It can be draining. There are times I reel it in because get things going can be too much for other people. INFJ, that's that chart the course. There's a sense of focus about the eyes, and there's a mapping things out and the thinking things through before you speak. And there's a in charge to ENFJ and quick to take action and motivate. And INFP can just I've had many friends in all of these, but INFP
behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. There's this wonderful that in INFP and INTP, frankly, too, I seem to bring them both into my life. As someone with the, ta-da, ENFP classic get things going energy, I really like the behind the scenes, inside, softer, gentler, calmer energy. And it's like I've attracted those people as friends. It's like we both appreciate what the other one brings to the table. I also have a lot of chart the course friends. And it's like I appreciate their calmer, more inward energy, and they appreciate my liveliness. So, I think if you really look, we present we've got the core of values. Okay, we've got the catalyst values driving us, but I think it's how we present, how our energy, not that we can't do all of it, right? But how we typically present, it looks pretty different to me. Once I learned interaction styles from Berens, it got easier for me to tell.
It's nice with interaction styles and like the Keirsey roles. It's got 2 factors to like it's there's an X and Y axis, so it creates that matrix, right? So you can the in charge, or Keirsey called the initiator, expressive and directive. The chart the course, or the contender is attentive and directive. The get things going, or collaborator, is expressive and informative, and then the behind the scenes, or the responder, is attentive and informative. So, I mean, you can kind of look at either one of those one at a time and kind of narrow it down by half, and then find the other.
Yeah, Paul was nerdy for the Keirsey temperaments for some point of his life, so he can recite it from memory.
Oh yeah, I memorize the whole table. I remember it's brilliant. It's brilliant stuff. It's just so neatly sliced, and so you can kind of start with. I mean, there is sort of a hierarchy of the coins, but there's so many different ways that you can approach trying to find the type, right? If you know that the NFs, the idealists, the catalysts, which definition's beautiful, but actually kind of sad. Like, we just help other people change, and we don't get anything out of it. But that temperament, if you look at the Keirsey model, if you find the idealists, the NFs, by their abstract communication, or what he called word usage, and their cooperative action, or what they call tool usage, then you can further look at the expressive versus attentive coin, and the directive and informative coin. And just there, I mean, you can look at those little bits. Like, why do the ENFP and INFP seem kind of similar? They're both more likely to share and exchange information than just than try to direct. And then see, are they trying to attend more and respond more to what's being said, or are they trying to really collaborate with those people in generating the ideas? Then you can start to narrow it down there. Mm-hmm. It's helpful to have that behavioral marker rather than trying to see what function is that. I mean, you can do that, but it's kind of the ultimate difficulty of psychological typing, is trying to sort of integrate the functionalist approach perspective with the structuralist approach, right? The functionalist being like behaviorist, looking at their outward manifestations to infer the cognitive contents. But I think that's what Keirsey did really, really well, and Berens too. Building on top of that, I think she added even more to it. That's a really good way to see these types in action, and more easy. It's really good for like people watching and kind of observing them in their element, right? Trying to identify them in the moment rather than have to sit down and ask them a bunch of questions about their life. So that could be a quick way to kind of identify which one.
That is really good, Paul.
That is true.
But yeah, that was a really good breakdown of Keirsey's material. Some other ways you can go about telling apart these types is the responding and initiating coin. So the introverted types in the NFs are of the responding. So they're typically waiting for someone to initiate with them, whereas the extroverted types from these NFs are more initiating types. So they're more likely to initiate contact and take more dominance in conversation too.
Joyce, can I share something silly? I went to a conference with some colleagues a number of years ago, and several times I would come back to the group and I'd say, I'd been in like the booth room, the display room, and I'd say, you know what? I said, I was over such and such, and somehow we got to talking, and then I would share with them what we learned. Guys, it took me years to figure out that I was the somehow we got to talking. My perception I was initiating all the time, but it was so natural. It's my filter, right? It's the water I swim in. It took me years to figure out I was the somehow. It just seemed to me it just kind of happened. No, it didn't just happen. I opened my mouth and was friendly to somebody, and that started it. So it's sometimes hard to have that view of yourself, but I love type for giving it to me. So I was the somehow.
Yeah. ENFPs are good for keeping the spark going in actually like conversations, so it doesn't die down. They're able to keep the conversation going, which is also a product of their NE too. I have ideas for days.
And the lack of, sometimes it's a healthy thing we do to keep the conversation going, and sometimes it's a little unhealthy because we can't handle the silence. But part of it for me is a sense there's discomfort in the group. So I'm trying to build a bridge and help extend the comfort. And trust me, there were times in my youth when I did it in an unhealthy way that was probably more than the group needed. But as I got more aware, I used it in a more knowing way. But yeah.
Well put. Well put. And another way to tell apart these types too is, I guess, when they have an idea, how long do they stick with that idea? NPs, when they have an idea, typically like they'll be really excited about it for quite a while, and then the excitement will die down. And then sometimes a lot of the ideas kind of like lose their shininess sometimes. It's almost like NE users are more likely to be interested in a bunch of different topics in different fields. So it's almost like they have a wider breadth. They know a little bit of a lot of things. So NE is really good at kind of like SI file cabineting random information from different places. Or it's not necessarily random, but it's like from the different places they've been researching. NE has a excitable idea hunger sometimes with that. Whereas like with NI, like with the ENFJ and the INFJ, they'll just turn everything back to the same concept. So Denzel will always talk about the carrot and the stick analogy until the end of time and relate everything back to it. He's like, everything in the world reminds me of this carrot and stick analogy. That's basically what NI does. It takes this one concept you can apply to everything, and it just stays with it for life. And so that's one of the signs of NI versus NE. NE is way more broad and plethoric and has a wider scope of ideas that it'll entertain and explore. NI just wants to find like this set of ideas that it can stick with for life that will explain everything of all time. So NI is kind of looking for stability and meaning. NI is kind of looking for a stability in concepts. So it's like, what idea stays stable over time? So they're going to be more likely to return to the same ideas over and again and again and again and again. Like you'll see it in Matthew Hussey. He just returns back to his concept. He'll talk about things like invest and test, and he'll just talk about the same concepts over and over again. NI is just like, it's very scarce with its ideas, and it'll keep adding to these scarce ideas to like fully flesh out these few ideas that it has. NE is more going to be curious and bounce off of a wider range of ideas in general, is what you'll see. But both types can be incredibly intellectual too. I will always defend that I think that Russell Brand is an ENFP, regardless of what other people may type him as. And you can see him always like constantly idea generating like mad cow. And he's a type 7 ENFP too, so it's just way obvious NE too. And so it's like NE on steroids. And so you'll see that difference of he'll be excitable about this idea and then excitable about this idea, but he's very excitable about ideas. Whereas NI is going to be more scarce with the ideas that it'll entertain and more centered in like the few ideas.
Joyce, Bob McAlpin teaches the metaphors that made a lot of sense for me here. In Extrovert Intuition, the metaphor he uses is the lighthouse. And you know how the light goes around? NE is scanning, and it's not doing so in a linear way. It's doing so in a relational way. It's scanning for what else, what do I see here that's new, and what does that relate to? And he said, NI is like a laser beam. And it's not about a dearth of ideas. It's about they laser in on something And that's why we can be good together, is because I'm doing scanning and NI's doing lasering. But I do feel, does that difference, Denzel and Joyce, does that resonate with you? The NI is like the laser beam. Paul, does the lighthouse metaphor, does that resonate with you at all?
I think anyone who I think Joyce could attest to that in our conversations.
He's a lot.
Yeah, I once distinguished NFPs and NFJs as like that if we're looking for X marks the spot, then the NFJ would be the one to be like, oh, there goes X marks the spot. Let's land the plane there and let's start digging to go as deep as we can. Whereas like the NFP is like, no, but we're having so much fun in the plane. Let's just keep on flying around the world. And it's like, why would we do that? That's the destination. X marks the spot. That's where truth is. That's where whatever it might be. It's like, yeah. And then now the story is going to end. It's like, no, the story is not going to end. Now is when we're going to start digging toward the truth. It's like, oh, but there's probably more X's around. It's like, and then the NFJ is like, no, that's the only X. And so, but the NFP is like, well, what if? And so I feel like that's like a big thing too. Is like it's not that NFPs don't know how to find truth, but it's like if they, from my experience, if they see truth or something, like if they see an opportunity to land the plane somewhere, then they're so excited about the idea. So they're just like, no, let's just keep on exploring all these different, like, oh, but what if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? What about this possibility? What about that possibility? It's like, and the NFJ might be like, we don't have to think so much about all these different possibilities when that might be the answer right there. And we just have to start digging more and more into that answer. The NFP is like, but that's not as fun. But the NFJ is like, how can not digging into the answer be fun? And so I feel like that could be a distinguisher. And then also another could be, I see NFPs as the people in the world who are constantly looking for novel ways to express oneself, their inner desires, their inner who they are, like just these novel ways of self-expression. Whereas I see NFJs as the people who are looking for constantly for different ways to progress how people interconnect with each other. So they're like constantly looking for like, okay, like how can we bring our interconnectedness, our interpersonal dynamics to the next level? Whereas like NFPs are like, okay, how can we understand more of who we are internally and be able to express that in a way that may even not be like, the stereotypical, maybe even be like taboo. So that's how we might get like a whole bunch of like different cultures, like, and that's why I think NFPs love to like travel so much and see like how are everybody else like living their lives that's different from what I'm already used to, and then how can I like integrate that to what I'm used to and then create even something different from there.
Like furries or
like
bronies. I mean, that's obviously where I started.
Hold on, like furries? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, like people who like to dress up as other animals.
Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
NFP, right?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
What else could I have been talking about?
Okay.
Kids are watching.
But yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's just those are like certain things that it's like, because NFPs are like, well, since it's always been done this way, why not do it this way instead?
Yeah. Denzel, I think just in response to that, I don't think I'm intentionally looking for novel. What you just turned a light bulb on for me here. The things are just coming up. They're just, it's perceived. It's presenting itself to me. And I'm not intentionally generating novel. It's like it just, the brain is doing what Dario describes as a Christmas tree thing. And so it's putting these disparate things together. And so something pops up. So it's not like I'm even in charge of driving it. It's like I'm on the receiving end of the new idea. Yeah. And one of my failings with it is I'm constantly, unintentionally, coming up with a better way of doing something. And I'm not trying to. It just, it'd be better if I put the keys here. Unfortunately, my introverted sensing is not as well developed So the next day, I can't remember what was the better way. So I can't find that thing that I came up with a better idea. But I wasn't intentionally trying to do novel. It just presented itself to me. I think ENFP is about, oh, this could be even better. I was
Yeah.
leading it. So thank you for turning that light bulb on.
Yeah, for sure.
I was managing a group of technical writers at one point, and a writer would say, oh, I ran into such and such problem and I did such and such and fixed it. And I'd go, oh, wow, that is so much better than the way we've been doing it. We should do it that way. And then I looked around the room and it was deer in the headlights. And, ENFP, I've got my sensors. I'm going, oh, no. So I walked it back and I said, but maybe that's not considering all the ramifications. That was a great idea Linda had. Would somebody like to look at that with Linda this next week? And then y'all report back to us if y'all think that. And inevitably, at least 2 other writers would raise their hand because they're very cooperative people. And they'd go look at it because I realized I lead with NE. I have no loyalty whatsoever to how we did it before. It's not that I'm looking for a different novelty. I just have no loyalty. If you show me a better thing, I'm on it. But that gives deer in the headlights to other people. So I had to learn, wait a minute, I'm way out in one end of the spectrum. So let's pull it back.
Yeah.
And that's
I think that actually makes total sense. And especially like, like it's not something that's like consciously done. Like I remember like even like for me, like as a child, ever since I was a kid, like I would just see shows, I'd see people interacting. I'm like, it's almost like snobbish in my head. Like, well, obviously if you speak in that tone, then that's the kind of emotional reaction you're going to get from the other person. How do they not see that? It's like, oh, obviously if you like, and so I'm not like consciously like looking for how to improve in that way, but it's just like, it just comes up. It's like, oh, this is just what it is. And then you eventually realize like, oh, not everybody's paying attention to that. So it's like, wait, these people really don't know how their conflict started. No, it didn't start just now. It started about 10 minutes ago when you said this, and then that made him think this, but he wasn't really responding to it just yet. It just planted the seed over there. But then he said this, and then you felt like now that was a seed planted over there, and then boom, boom, boom. And there's been times where I've had to like deconstruct a conflict down to its core, even in like group chats. And people are like, oh, I didn't even know that I affected that person that way. I'm like, yeah, like, and so it's like, okay, yeah, like, so maybe there's ways that we should create. So that's why maybe we should start being more intentional with how we speak in this way. That's how we should probably be more intentional in how we do this and all of that. And so I feel like in the same sense, like, yeah, like it's not, yeah, every one of us NF types, it's just something that naturally comes out. I agree with you on that.
You just gave me an idea. I want to ask if y'all feel this. When something happens in a room and it shifts the energy, because people got offended or they felt put off, and there's a shift in the room, I feel it viscerally.
Same.
I feel it in my body. And the thought is what you're saying. How can they not have seen this?
Mm-hmm.
But everybody doesn't have these sensors, and they don't. Do y'all experience it sometimes you feel what is that saying? You could have cut the
tension with a knife, right?
That's right. You could have cut the tension in the room with a knife. It's like when it shifts, it's like whoosh. I just felt the energy get lowered and get more dense. And do y'all have that experience too? Am I saying okay?
Yeah, that's really relatable, Carol. And so thank you everyone for coming out today and sharing your NF story and your big heart for the world. Thank you for showing that sensitive place you have for the suffering of the world, that your sensitivity shows that you still care. That caring is the catalyst in which will change the world. And so thank you for that. I appreciate all of the heartfelt contributions and all of the wonderful ways of putting the NFs, the mention of Martin Luther King from Denzel, that was a really impactful in a very visceral way to kind of put NF into a statement. And with Carol, you were able to encapsulate this really enthusiastic, optimistic spirit that actually is able to elevate the mood of people and also provide them a sense of hope with their lives, because ENFP optimism is contagious, especially as a 7, as an ENFP. That is optimism on drive. It is the golden retriever of optimism.
It may be the border collie of optimism.
Yeah, and it makes people optimistic too, because through your feeling, they're able to also feel that too. So thank you for that. And thanks, Paul, for your jokes and for your Keirsian knowledge. You know so much about Keirsey's work, probably more than Keirsey knows about Keirsey's work.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to call you a jerk, but Keirsey died about 8 years ago. So that means I do know more about him, and that just means you're insensitive. No, what I meant to say was I'm happy to contribute.
I'm happy to have you as a contributor. Yeah, thank you, NFs, for showing your emotionally naked heart to the world. And hopefully through that, it's able to inspire people to be more vulnerable, to be more loving, and more kind to other people's sensitivities. So through being such heart-led people, we're able to kind of make the world more heart-led too, through our ideals. We are change makers through our wanting the world to be a better place. And so I appreciate that there's an inner change maker in every NF, and in people in general. It's just NFs can't turn it off. So it's almost like that part of your brain that's a change maker is like change maker, whereas like everyone has it within them, but NFs can't ignore that side of themselves. And so thank you for having that similar annoying voice in your mind that always wants the world to be a better place and can see a better place and hopes for a better place. And that's where real change is made, when you see the change and you keep fighting for it, or a part of your heart can't forget about the beauty of that ideal that you see. It's almost like the most beautiful thing you can see in the world is your ideals. And so trying to bring your ideals into the world is a way of bringing beauty into the world.
Well, or Regina Hall. She's also, she's absolutely, I think she's the most beautiful woman on the planet. But like values, that's a close second for sure. Or actually, I think Scarlett Johansson, because Ryan Reynolds is Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson is the girl that even all straight girls want to get with. And Ryan Reynolds is the guy that even all straight guys want to get with. So I guess Ryan Reynolds and Scarlett Johansson, number one, tied for number one. Second two is Regina Hall. Third is values and optimism. Get that right?
Well put. Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself.
You probably could have. It was very sloppy.
And so thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.
I enjoyed the whole thing. I enjoyed you guys so much. So nice to meet you.